Welcome to Oneness in 12 Spheres of Life program, hosted by Humanities Team. Humanities Team is a 501c3 nonprofit organization with the mission of awakening the world to oneness. Monthly, Humanities Team hosts Oneness in the 12 Spheres of Life program. Today's sphere is education with Dr. Neil Hawks. The 12 spheres are art, economics, education, environment, government, health, infrastructure, justice, media, relationships, science, and spirituality. I just wanted to name the different 12. We try to go over them monthly in alphabetical order. And today's focus is the sphere of education with Dr. Neil Hawks. Dr. Neil, thank you so much for being with us. I am Caroline Chang, and I'm filling in today for our worldwide director, Steve Farrell. I am Steve's assistant, and I also have a show that I host called Awake to Oneness, which has the same mission as Humanities Team. I'd like to introduce my wonderful co-host today, Anna Marie Peters. Anna Marie, please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. It's great to be here with you again today. As Caroline said, she is the host of her own Oneness internet radio program, and she has thousands of followers. So we are in great hands with you, Caroline. Thank you for co-hosting with me today. So also a little bit about me, for those who don't know me. I have been involved with Humanities Team since 2005. I am the country coordinator here in South Africa. For me, it's the home. I call it the home of Ubuntu. That I like to refer to as Africa's gift of oneness to the world. I have also had the privilege to be involved with many things in Humanities Team on a global level, and in this instance, I am the co-coordinator of the Oneness in 12 Spheres of Life initiative, together with our worldwide coordinating director, Steve Farrell, who, as Caroline said, cannot be with us today. So the topic of today, education, is of utmost importance. At this juncture in our human history, we remain having many questions around education and how we may best prepare people for life. So I know that our conversation today with Dr. Neil Hawks is going to shed a lot of light on a lot of questions that we have around this topic, and that it will be of great value to all of us. So thank you very much, Caroline, and a warm welcome from me to everyone. And so, Caroline, as we have arranged, I think I will just go straight ahead and read, as we always do, a short overview of the sphere of education to set the stage for our discussion today, right? Okay, great. So, in our overview of the sphere of education, we want to understand what learning, the gathering of knowledge and understanding, is really all about. How does it happen best? What lies at the heart of learning and education? And what are some of the best and most effective approaches to learning and education? This sphere includes all forms of education and all ages. It covers all species and cross-species, and the formal and informal. It takes into consideration the brain, the psychology of learning, learning to learn, and awareness of cultural characteristics and assumptions, and just a whole lot of things. From the perspective of oneness, we are interested to know how aspects such as beingness, consciousness, interconnectedness, creation and co-creation, openness, authenticity, freedom, mystery, and so on, play a role in preparing a person for life. We're dreaming of education and learning that is infused with self-knowledge and love, that is gained through continuous practice of connecting to one's inner wisdom throughout one's life journey, so that one can grow in the real understanding of life. In this sphere, we want to learn how students and people can learn to reach their highest potential, and how we may all acquire the natural ability to fulfill our own interest without jeopardizing the interests of others. We want to see the teachers embody and enact the principles laid out by these approaches, and that they hold a personal commitment to transformation and ongoing learning and inquiry. These are some of the reasons why we are looking forward to our discussion with Dr. Neil Hawkes today. And with this, we are going over to Caroline to properly introduce our special guest for today. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Anna Marie. Thank you. And I do want to just, before I introduce Dr. Neil, I want to just let our viewers know if they have any questions, they can type those questions in the chat window. So I just wanted to and we will get to as many questions as we can during the program. I'd like to introduce now our special guest, Dr. Neil Hawkes. He is the founder of International Value Education Trust, which promotes the philosophy of valuing and its practical application, values-based education. He currently works as an international educational consultant, promoting value-based education throughout the world. Welcome, Dr. Neil, to Oneness in the 12 Spheres of Life program.
Thank you very much indeed, Caroline, and a big hi from England to everybody who's watching today. I feel very honored to be asked today to speak to such a wide and wonderful audience. So thank you very much, all of you who have joined this webinar today. I feel deeply honored to be asked, so thank you very much.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes, I shared a little bit before we came online. We have met before in some way, and we have had you on our radar for quite a while. So we've been looking forward to speaking with you about the question of values-based education and what this is all about. So thank you for coming and for taking the time and the effort. So I think with this, I'd like to go right into the first question that we have for you today. And so when it comes to values, Neil, it's something that's very easy to talk about. All schools, most schools, promote themselves as upholding, nurturing, and advancing basic values and principles. Now, unfortunately, reality tells us that many schools are not succeeding very well in this regard when it comes to issues of disrespect, lack of discipline, violence and abuse, poor pass rates, and all kinds of problems. And this is certainly, a question here in South Africa. Many schools I know are battling in this regard. So what would you say are the main reasons for this unfortunate situation? Why is it that it's easy to talk about values, but it's not that easy to apply them, to make them alive?
I think it may be useful if I give just a little bit of background to myself so that viewers can understand the context I'm coming from. I'm very proud to say that I am a teacher. If I'm asked what I do, I always say that I'm a teacher. I'm very proud to be that. I've been a teacher for a long time, and I continue to teach now, both in all levels of education. I've also had the privilege to be in English speak a head teacher or a principal of a number of schools in the English system. I've also been an administrator, chief advisor of the educational system at county level. And I then decided after doing these sort of jobs that I needed to see if what I was thinking about actually worked in practice, what the ideas that I was thinking about actually work. So after being quite senior in the educational world, I returned to run a school as a school principal again. And that took me to Oxford in the United Kingdom, but a part of Oxford that was not, well, it was just a typical neighborhood school. And this gave me the opportunity to see if, as I say, the ideas worked. Some years before, I was beginning to notice that children were coming to school without an understanding of words such as respect, tolerance, happiness, joy, responsibility, compassion, empathy. They didn't seem to understand what these words meant. I think traditionally, churches and homes and communities gave a lot of effort on that. But with the breakdown of extended families, and there seemed to be a lessening of understanding of that vocabulary. So that I wanted to see if giving children the information about a universal positive set of words called values would actually make a difference. Would it affect behavior? Would it affect academic achievement? Would the people actually be able to be just nicer folk, as I think all people are, really? So that was the experiment that I wanted to put into action. Because as your question was, about the state of the world, I believe that we are at a very challenging, but at the same time exciting time in human development. There is an incredible breakdown of relationships going on throughout the world, and it manifests itself in different forms in different countries. Although I'm speaking from England, I have experience working in lots of countries of the world, so I think I have at the beginnings of an understanding about what's happening. My own, and this is my own thinking, is that if individuals build a state of what I call peacelessness within themselves, and the peacelessness comes about because of such things as feeling that they're not having their basic needs met, there's not enough food or not enough jobs, or they become angry because they perceive that one section of the community has these things and they don't. Also, there's historical things, and you in South Africa will be aware of those historical things that then come right in your face at this juncture. So people feel peaceless. And if people feel peaceless, that is translated into political and social forms. And so if a nation is feeling peaceless, then you have politicians, leaders who reflect that peacelessness. And so I've been trying to think over the years, how can we enable human beings to bring out that essence of them? And I believe the essence of humanity is really wonderful. How can you allow that essence, but at the same time be aware of the social constraints, the context, which make people peaceless? So coming back to the school situation, I believe that if we could help children to understand how to attain peacefulness within themselves, then that would, in years to come, translate into our social structures, and we would then be able to have a harmony in the world, which we don't see at the moment. So I remember a few years ago visiting Iceland. I'm very fond of Iceland. I'm very fond of Scandinavian countries because in many ways they have a sense of peacefulness that some other countries don't have. And I remember the Prime Minister of Iceland held a reception for a number of us, and he talked to us about how the media, politics, how there is almost a conspiracy to deny reality. Being the Prime Minister of Iceland, he knew that we are suffering from climate change, for instance. And he said to us, and he showed us on a map how the Arctic is getting smaller. So there's no denying that. Whether it's all to do with human beings or not can be argued, but there's no doubt it is. And he was saying that human beings have to really be more mindful about their relationships with each other and their relationship with this planet if we are to go forwards. I'm really lucky, and I'll stop speaking in a moment. I'm really lucky because I have 11 grandchildren. And some people say to me, Neil, why do you go on passionately about values in the world? You know, you could put your feet up. And I say it's because of those 11 children. They are wonderful children, but I want them to have a future, as I want the people in America to have a future, in Africa to have a future. Mm-hmm. I believe we are a global family, and as a global family, with so many of us now on this planet, we have to search for ways of having unity and oneness with each other. That is the way forward.
Absolutely. I love the word that you use, peacelessness, because, you know, when I think about, you know, what my answer to the question would be is, you know, why does all of this happen? Is, you know, I mean, we are a oneness organization. And then obviously an answer to this would be is that there's a lack of connection. So we are peaceless when our connections are broken, isn't that so? You spoke about the family structures that are broken. You know, we have a loss of connection with ourselves and our family and all of that. So, and that results into a peacelessness. That's a beautiful slant on all of this. Caroline, I'd like to hand over to you, maybe your reflection and the next question for Neil.
Well, I love what Neil is doing because children are very near and dear to my heart. I'm not as blessed to have 11 grandchildren, but I do have one. I have a grandson that just turned 8 last week, and he likes to spend, he calls me Mima, and he likes to spend lots of time with me. But children are very near to, even though I only have one grandson, I teach piano lessons. And the majority of my students are the age 4 to 7. So I have children around me all the time. And the thing I love about teaching music is music is the language of the soul, and it touches everyone. And teaching children music, I'm also sharing in my way the truth of oneness with them. And so I love what I do with the kids, and I think it's so important. It is the future of our human family. Like Neil said, we are one human family, and the future of that human family is unity, love, and peace, and oneness, to understand that we are truly all connected and we are one. So thank you so much, Neil.
Absolutely. So, Neil, you shared a little bit. I think we've got a brief look at, you know, how this all came about. You know, how did it happen that this whole values-based education came about? But so, what is the underlying vision? What was the vision that you had with this whole initiative?
What I say, and I want to explain immediately that it's not an I. I'm a great believer in us. And so when I became principal, and in the English system in those days when I was principal, I'm talking about 20 years ago, we had great autonomy. So I was able to organize the school in the way that we, the staff, community, and myself felt was appropriate. So we were able to do things slightly differently. I have certain beliefs. I believe there should never be a hierarchy of relationships, only a hierarchy of roles, so that everybody in your organization, whether it's a school or any other organization, knows what role they play. But everybody is equal. There's equality in the organization. In my experience, so many organizations fail because there's a hierarchy of relationships. So the person who's thought of as the boss has the biggest desk, the biggest car parking space outside, etc., etc. But I believe that the leader, whether it be the leader of a country or a school or any other organization, your job is to release the creative dynamic of everybody in your organization. Everybody should feel empowered to give their energy. So it's not the boss who is looked on to give the energy, it's all. And so that was one of the principles that we used in the school. Another principle was that education is a conversation. It's a conversation between generations about matters of significance. That means that young people can learn from older people can, so it's a two-way process. Learning is not a one-way process. So we were thinking at school, how could we empower the young people to actually take responsibility, to have autonomy, to be able to be themselves totally. I've got to pause because I'm suddenly looking at myself on the screen, which is rather off-putting.
This excites me so much.
That's better. That's better. I'm not someone who looks in the mirror at myself too. So thank you for switching me around.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, this is so exciting, Neil. It makes me think. I mean, here in Africa, we, again coming back to the concept of Ubuntu, we have a saying that says it takes a village to raise a child, and I think, I suppose maybe that is why we see a lot of issues when it comes to education and schooling, is that there's not enough of this approach where children are where this hierarchy. So you have the headmaster and the teacher that plays a role of authority, and I know that in Montessori schools, for example, instead of having children grouped into grades, they put children together in like 3 to 6 year olds, and then again 6 to 9 year olds, so that the children, the smaller ones, learn from the older ones, and vice versa. So it's wonderful. Yeah, it's really exciting to hear that that was a vision of yours. It was something you knew that would be valuable.
I noticed that someone asked a question about there's a need for massive healing. And I think there is a need for massive healing in the system. Systemically, a big problem we have in so many countries of the world is that education systems are based on the 19th century. It's the 19th century model that was, the British took their colonial ideas and their education system at that time into so many countries, including your own in South Africa. And those systems haven't changed. We have tinkering with them, adding bits onto them, but very rarely does a government say, well, hang on here, we're in the 21st century now. What should our schools look like? If you think of Finland's schools, for instance, they're beginning to think in 21st century terms. A lot of countries around the world are saying, let's stop now. But the issue we have in education systems is there's a colossal investment of time and people and bureaucracy. And to get a change in education systems seems to be nigh impossible. And another thing that holds the change back is that, that's what I call political interference. You have people who don't know about child development, don't know how to educate children, but they have massive control on the education systems themselves. And so this incredible machine of an education system is stuck. And people who are joining my movement for change, values-based education, that movement is transforming in not a threatening way. Let's go back to the healing. I've always described myself as a revolutionary of the heart, not of the gun. We need an incredible revolution of the heart so that we can say, what is it children need to help them to be mentally secure now? In our own country here in the UK, where the debate is at the moment about mental stability, not only of children, but of adults. Throughout the world, the decline in mental health is, I think, running at a very fast pace. Now, what we find in values-based schools is the reverse. The reverse happens because you create a culture which is different. It's a culture of acceptance based on values. Now, may I explain what a values-based school is, that listeners can and viewers can understand? A values-based school is when you base everything that you do in the school on a set of community agreed universal positive human values, such as love, respect, oneness, as you would use, altruism, compassion, empathy, relationship. Those words are chosen by the community. And I've worked with so many communities in the world, and every community comes up with a similar list. Now, these are positive values. There's another list of values that's running in society which are actually dominant, and they are called limiting values. The Barrett Values Center, my friend Richard Barrett, did a lot of research on limiting values, and he's looked at countries and the degree to which limiting values hold the society back. Limiting values such as greed, bureaucracy, jealousy, you can name them, all the things that limit human potential. So in a values-based school, you focus attention on these community-inspired words. Now, the crucial thing is, and we come back now to what I said about no hierarchy of relationships. What happens in a values-based school is all the adults, now this is so difficult to do and easy for me to say, all adults work really hard to model the values that they want the children to live. So everybody, every teaching person, every support assistant, the person who cleans the school, everybody buys in to we are models. So that's why I say to teachers and others in the school, you are heroes. You're the heroes of the world because you are sending messages to the future. So what are the messages you send? And the messages you send should be, in my view, these positive messages based on simple words. Now, what then happens? If you give children, from my experience and the research that Terry Lovett in Australia carried out when we put this work into Australia a number of years ago, we know from the research what happens to the children. Children become sensitized to values. It allows them to begin to be absolutely deep thinkers. They begin to look at what the adult world is creating and ask questions about it. They're less likely to be, we use the expression in England, conned. I don't know if it's a universal expression, but it means being taken in by media, advertising, politicians who are manipulating the system. People who have a strong values base say, hang on here, is this true? And that's why in certain parts of the world, I'm not an invited guest, because in some countries, they know that what I'm actually doing is empowering the people to think, to be aware what's happening to them, and to say, hang on, we're not going to do this. So the first thing that happens is that awareness, that values awareness, and which gives you a lens to look at the world, which is objective. Second thing is, it opens your heart. You then start seeing other people in a way that you haven't before. It allows you to have positive relationships with people. You are less judgmental. You are less judgmental because someone might be a different color, a different race, a different religion, a different gender. All that goes because you see the person as a real human being, someone who's identical to us all. Could we have that oneness? So a values-based school encourages children and everyone to look at that unity of people. It looks at people in a global way. What's breaking my heart at the moment is the way that so many countries, and I'm not going to name them, have reduced themselves into more a nationalist way, our country first. At a time when 8-9 billion people are on this planet, and in order to survive another 50 years, we have to find a way through it. So a values-based school is the beginnings of that. And what it then does is empower the community. The adults in the community then say, yes, this is right. Now, all that sounds easy, but in practice, it's difficult because we all come into the world and as lovely, wonderful people, but the experiences we have, they then limit the way we see the world. Yeah. I have to admit, I'm not perfect. If there's anybody listening to me that's perfect, do let me know, because we're not. And this is where our book, which my wife Jane and I, Jane's a psychotherapist, and she works with me. Our latest book is called The Inner Curriculum. Mm-hmm. And that's just been brought out. It can be found on Amazon UK or by the publishers John Catt Publications. And this is a revolutionary book because it asks teachers, parents, community leaders, politicians to think about the inner curriculum. The inner curriculum is about our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our sensations, our spiritual world, if you take that to mean the world that's so important to us internally. So we are suggesting that there should be an inner curriculum in all schools. And I've been helped by also colleagues in the United States. The internal family system, led by Dick Schwartz and colleagues, have been supporting particularly my wife as we look to see what can we bring to schools to help heal children. And IFS, as it's known, is very important in our methodology. So we're saying, have a values-based school and then inject a lot of thinking in your inner curriculum. All schools have an external curriculum, but there are very few that actually start with the inner curriculum. And if we're going to have a peaceful world, we need to start at that point.
Wow. That is fascinating. It's so exciting, Neil.
Yes,
Caroline.
Yes, I thank you, Neil. That is so wonderful, because I do want to bring in a question from a viewer. But before I bring in that question, I wanted just to touch upon what you were saying about equality. And like even using a school as an example is perfect. Like you have the principal, you have the janitor, you have the ladies that serve lunch. And to teach students that all of these different workers in the school are all equal. The principal is equal to the janitor, equal to the lunch lady. They're all, because oneness, and the truth of oneness, that is at our core, we are all equal, no matter what our job is. So I love that your value-based education is showing that to students at a young age. And also touch upon the fact that you talked about, we are all teachers and we're all students. We're both. We can all learn. I learn from my youngest student. I have students that are 4 years old. I learn from them. They learn from me. I learn from them. So we can all teach each other, and we can all be students of each other. So I wanted to bring that in. But there is a question from a listener, Lynn, from Lynn. She wants to know, how do we learn, how can we teach our children, how can we teach our children about the unique connection of the 12 basic universal law? This is a question from Lynn.
I don't think I'm in a position to answer that because I'm not a part of your organization. If you could frame it in a different way, I'd be very grateful.
To be honest, I'm not sure what she means by the 12 universal laws either. I'm not sure where she got that from. But I guess if we boil it down, I guess her question, if we boil it down, is...
I think what she refers to, Caroline, there are what we talk about universal laws. So that would be laws that you naturally find in the universe, or that we look at life in a spiritual way. So one law, for example, is as above, so below, as within, so without. There's another law that says all is energy. I actually like that question. If we consider, so we can't say, this is really true, but if we say everything is energy, how does that, when we consider that law, how does that impact, our ability to live a life that reflects positive values, as Neil refers to them. I know that there are 12 of them, but I know the one is, as above, so below, that all is mind, that, I think that's another important one. If we say that there's a law, that, it's not, you don't only have your own mind, but we are all part of one big mind. And that when you consider that as being a natural law, how would that influence your life, And you see that my mind is not only my own mind, but I'm part of the minds of many others. And I think this is what she's was trying to get at. And I think it is valuable.
Well, she just typed in that the first universal law is oneness. So I guess I think her question is, how do we teach oneness to children? So Dr. Neil, if you could just share on your thoughts on that question.
I think it's through creating a values-based school and a values-based classroom that allows an energy to take place. Now, over the years, I've spent a lot of time reflecting. Some people call it mindfulness, others meditation. I think there's a need to really think about oneself and the effect you have on other people, and to understand where one's ideas, thoughts are actually coming from. I'm a great fan, if that's the word, of philosophers such as Ken Wilber in the States, Matthew Ricard, my French friend who works with the Dalai Lama. I've been incredibly influenced by a lot of philosophers. My own work at Oxford University was in philosophy. So I believe that self-reflection is really important. And one thing when I'm giving talks, I remind people is when I listen to so many people, they point fingers at other people or other institutions. And I say, if you point a finger at other people, remember there are 3 fingers pointing to yourself. So when you really look at yourself, how do you impact? One question I ask teachers is, do you really relate to other children? Caroline, you love teaching music. I'm sure you're really good, and your grandson is coming to stay with you. I can tell through our conversation today that you have the gift of connection. You're able to connect. I often, when I'm interviewing people and getting to know people, I look into their eyes, and those that know me well know that I make an assessment because your eyes are the windows to the soul. They tell you what this person is really like. And so in answer to the question, how do you build oneness? You start with yourself. Too many people think you start with everybody else and you impose oneness on other people. I think if each one of us takes responsibility for really thinking, well, today, you're all much earlier in, I think most of you are listening to me much earlier in the day, but this day, at the end of it, have a moment where you'll reflect, how did I relate to other people? Because what we're talking about today, we can give it names, but it's really about relationships. What is the relationship with ourselves? What is the relationship with other people? Are our relationships empowering relationships? Are we really helping young children to develop the skills, the dispositions, the knowledge, which will help our society to be peaceful and thriving in the future? Or do we, through our actions, not do that? I'll give an example. Sometimes I go into a school and I'm talking to staff, and there are certain members of staff that will find it very difficult to listen to me because they will say things like, well, we want respect, but it's the students who must respect us. And I say, hang on, you have to model respect to the students. So if you have, for instance, if the school adopts a value such as respect, what stops happening? And this is the difficult part. Well, teachers can't shout at children anymore. They don't use their personal power to control students. We can all do that. If I'm a big person and the little children are 6 or 7, I can keep them in control. But what I'm not doing is empowering them to be self-led. A values-based school encourages the child to be self-led. So I hope that answers in some way the question that the viewer asked. And if that person wants to take the discussion any further, do contact me through our website. And if I may tell you what our website is, then please do have a look at it. It's www.valuesbasededucation.com. Values-based education is all one word, .com. It's I'm pleased to say it has more hits worldwide than any other values website. So it has 10,000 hits a month.
So inspiring. Neil, I'd like us to get a little bit to the practicality. So we're talking about, the inner side of all of this and how it works. But how do you establish a value-based school? Are these existing schools that is a program that they adopt, that you take them and they buy into? How does this work?
What I've been doing, and it started in the UK, is working from grassroots up. I decided a number of years ago that I wasn't going to curry favor with politicians. In our system, you have a change of government and then the policy changes. So you can have a 3-year program and it will stop because the new government will throw it out because they want their particular way. So I have been to 10 Downing Street here and a few years ago, but I decided, no, I was going to work with school systems. In the UK context, that means talking at local level and getting interest. So it was very much a ground up movement. And it's been phenomenal because in the UK, 20% of our schools here would say they're explicitly values-based schools. And worldwide, I made a video for Pakistan 2 weeks ago. And the Prime Minister of Pakistan was listening to me on that video. And so values-based education is growing phenomenally in Asia and around the world. And the reason it's growing is because it's just good common sense. Yes. People often look to complicate things. They always look for programs that sound really good. I've been in some countries that offer, come and have this program and it'll change things. Yeah. Values-based education is not a program. It's a way of being. Yes. It's about cultural change. It's not about introducing a program into a school. So like SEL in the United States, social and emotional learning. It's not a program. It's saying to a whole school, look, you have to look at what culture you are building. What is the education that you are building with these children? And so this community meets together. In Australia, where Australia spent $40 million a few years ago on looking to see if values work would work there, and they provided money for community forums. So I think community forums are really important if it's practical in your country, and not all countries would find it practical for all sorts of reasons. But bringing the community together, asking the question, what value do you think is most important for your child to develop? And then you get people discussing that question. Have an argument about it. And some people will say, oh, competition is really important. Others will say, no, trust is really important. Yeah. After a really good discussion and an understanding about this vocabulary, then you invite everybody to propose certain values for their school and community. So you write them up, and those values then become the school's values. Now, it's really important to have a good lot of values, because the human being, if you think of us as a jigsaw, we're made of lots of different values. Some schools say, oh, we've got our values, there are 4 of them, but that's not enough. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because what you are doing with the children, and my own research shows this, is that you are building an ethical vocabulary. You're giving the words so they have an ethical vocabulary. That ethical vocabulary then gives them something that I've termed ethical intelligence.
Yeah.
Ethical intelligence is the most important intelligence to develop in the world. It's a subset of ethical intelligence is emotional intelligence. But having ethical intelligence allows you, as I described earlier, to have this incredible freedom to stand back and be an objective observer of your environment and yourself. So ethical intelligence is the outcome of a values-based school. So then I could go into, if you were all teachers listening, I could go into how you do that in the school, how you teach through the lessons, etc. But values-based education, as I've said earlier in the talk, is about underpinning all your school policies, everything you do. And coming back to an earlier point, if you want to see if a school is truly equal, look at the photographs of staff in the entrance hall and see where the pictures of staff are. Traditionally, you'll find the principal or head teacher at the top and the janitor, the caretaker at the bottom. That tells everyone immediately that there's a hierarchy of relationships. So I say to people, jumble them all up, label the roles so everyone knows whose role, but show that here we are a community who are all working with equality. And that's so important. But of course, that's easy for me to see, but it challenges people. They say, well, he's paid or she's paid more money than I am. Why, you know? So you get into a big debate about the efficacy of that. But asking those sort of questions is really important. And another question, you know, 19th century schools have bells. Why do they have bells? Because the schools were based on the factory system in Europe at that time. So you had bells. So I say, why do you have bells now? There may be a good reason, but, you know, another one I challenge people on is, why do children line up in playgrounds or in yards before they go into the school? Is there a good educational reason for doing that? Or is it because you've always done it? Now, if there are only 2 doors and they have to get in, then that might be a good reason for doing it. So what I'm doing, and I said I'm a revolutionary, is challenging why we do things. And if I was talking to politicians, I'd challenge them in their settings. Why do you do what you do? I remember in the United States, just before Christmas time, I was in James Madison's house in Virginia, and I was in the room in which he wrote the wonderful laws that make the United States work. And I just got overwhelmed with the realization that he was so clever, because he wanted to limit the power of the various constituents of power in the United States. And I thought, wow, that is incredible. Because I think people like James Madison had a vision of equality for the times. And of course, we're all creatures of our times, you know.
You touched upon, you started talking about teachers and the value-based education. And there was a question from Barbara, who was saying, how would you select teachers for teaching in a value-based school?
I'd want to, number one is I'd want to see what their relationships are. So I wouldn't accept someone on an application form. We might need to look at application forms because we need to just make sure they've got the right qualifications, etc. But once that's done, then I want to know, will this person relate to children or students if they're older? Are they able to make that connection? Will they be able to form positive relationships? One of the great issues, Caroline, in the world at the moment is about attachment. Young children, many young children have the worries through all sorts of things they've got with mental health issues, because they haven't sufficiently attached to their parent or caregiver at an early age. If we don't have positive attachment to those people, we cannot attach to ourselves. So in many schools, the teacher has now to be the one that makes the attachment with the child. If they come from a home where that attachment hasn't been built, then I need the teachers to be able to make real quality attachments, so that then builds up trust, and the value of trust is then built up in the individual. So I want to see how someone relates. So I would ask them to demonstrate their skills. I'd watch them going around the school. I'd watch them interacting with me. I'd look at their eyes to see if they're connecting. Are they smiling eyes? You can always tell where someone is. Do their eyes smile? Mm-hmm. You know, I'm doing a TED talk later on in the month, and I'm going to talk a little bit about eyes, I think, in that talk. But relationships are the key to everything. And it's the breakdown of relationships that then create the issues. And too many relationships now are about how many friends do I have virtually on the internet? Am I on Instagram? And we need to help young people to use technology in a creative, wise way, as we're all using it today, but not to be overwhelmed and feel their relationships come from that medium, because they don't. As human beings, we are desperate for a good relationship. Most of us feel quite alone in this world. So we look for linkages. Did that answer your question, Caroline?
Yes, it did. Actually, it was Barbara's question, but yes, it did. Yes.
I hope that answered your question, Barbara.
So again, Neil, so a person asked a question, how does a teacher, become a values-based teacher? Does it then actually work that a person would see, what you offer on your website, and they complete a course in values-based education? Is that how it works?
No, it doesn't work in that way, interestingly enough. What I've found through experience is if individual teachers come on courses, they will gain a great deal. But when they go back to their institution, they find they cannot create a values-based school. So what I recommend is professional development in service training, whatever the expression is in your own country, where the whole school community meets together. Because, as I said, we're talking about cultural change.
Yes.
And the key people are the superintendents in the United States, the principals, the head teachers in England and in many other countries. It's finding the locus of influence, because it's those people that have to say, yes, this is what we want. And once those people decide it, then all the staff take part in a day's training, and to understand. Training is not the word I really like, because it's really bringing out something, right? Training implies you're giving and putting in. But so we're bringing out and we're releasing this energy. And what I found is that it works so well because people see it as common sense. The results are always that teachers find, and teachers in values-based schools will tell you, teaching becomes easier. It's not a battle with children. Your first question was about ill discipline in schools and things like that. Well, it has a magical effect on things like discipline behavior. But the whole school community has to use their energy in a very creative, possible way. And it doesn't happen in 1 hour, but it will happen in 1 year.
Yes.
But it's that belief that you can shift the way a system operates through the 7 principles of being a values-based school. And I'll briefly go through those principles if time allows. I don't know where we are in our program.
Caroline, we've got 5 minutes. I think Does Neil have?
We
Neil
have, yes, Neil, you have time. Yes, yes.
Time. Yeah. Just briefly today, but if anybody's interested, do go on Amazon, and there's this book that I would recommend, which is called From My Heart, Transforming Lives Through Values. That was a book that we wrote in 2013. It's not about me, it's about what's happening worldwide in values-based schools. So I do recommend that to anyone who's viewing today who's interested in taking it a bit further or introducing these things in your school. And I am an international educator, so if you run a school system, please invite me. I'd love to come, and Jane will come too. But briefly, the 7 pillars are as follows, and they're not in rank order. So you introduce these all at the same time. Do you understand? So you don't start with number 1 and work through. But I'll start with modeling. Modeling by the adults is crucial. So once the school understands what values it's going to be working on, then the staff of the school have to say, well, what does this mean to us? What behaviors do we then show, and which behaviors do we stop? And that talk is quite challenging and needs to be mediated in a very compassionate, understanding way, in my experience. But modeling is crucial, because if you have some members of staff that don't model and some do, then the students will say, well, what's this about? And what students don't like is to think they are being manipulated, that this system is about manipulating them. Then they say, well, you're only introducing values because you want to control us. And that's not what values work is about. It's not about control. The second thing is the inner curriculum, which we've mentioned earlier. This helping children and adults first to understand the connection between understanding the brain, interpersonal neurobiology, the work of great Dan Siegel, for instance. Dan's work has impacted on my own work a great deal. So how the brain works, how you relate to other people through that knowledge. When children understand their limbic system, they understand when they're having an amygdala hijack, when they're losing their temper. You said earlier that in Parliament today in South Africa, you had politicians, this was before we came on air, who were actually fighting with each other. Well,
I don't want to interrupt, but I'm just keeping an eye on the time. If you could just do me a favor, could you just list them by name? You said there's 7. We have time just to list them by name, okay?
Modeling, inner curriculum, reflection, that's mindfulness work, meditation, the atmosphere of the school, the culture of the school, looking at that, how you do things around here. The curriculum, looking at the whole school curriculum and the values curriculum. Thinking about leadership and who leads this, including the children's leadership, giving them agency, because that's one of the effects of values-based education, is agency. And lastly, but by no means least, is giving them the ethical vocabulary. Those 7 things create the model of a values-based school. But as I said earlier, do go onto our website, and it's all explained, and most of it is free to you because we're a charity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, this is like the time just flies. Where does the time go? Thank you so much, Dr. Neil. That is, you've given us so much, and it's everybody. I encourage everyone to go to your website and learn more. And it's a wonderful program. Thank you. And Anna Marie, thank you so much, Anna Marie, for co-hosting and being my co-host here today. We do here at Humanities Team, we are a nonprofit. We are a 501c nonprofit organization. And one of the things that helps support our organization is Community Circle. Community Circle is just $10 a month or $100 a year, and you become a part of a community, and you have access to a wealth of information through our community circle, and it helps support, and we have a Facebook page. There's so many great things. So please check that out. Go to our website and check out the community circle and help support our mission here at Humanities Team. Also, we have the Oneness Declaration. We'd love for you to go to our website and click on the Oneness Declaration. Read through our Oneness Declaration, and if it resonates with you, please sign it and share it with your family and friends. Thank you so much. Next, we have Conscious Business Initiative, which is now, we transformed to Conscious Business Enterprise. And it is 5 nonprofit organizations: Humanities Team, Goya Peace Foundation, the Club of Budapest, and Case Western Reserve. I'm trying to read it. We have all come together to launch the Conscious Business Initiative. Check us out on the website. Also, read the Conscious Business Declaration, and if it resonates with you, we invite you to sign it and to share it also with your families and friends. Our next program will be Tuesday, April 17th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, that's West Coast time, with Neil Donald Walsh, who is our founder, and he is going to be doing a free webinar, Mastery in Living. So with Neil Donald Walsh, put that on your calendar. You do not want to miss that. You go to livingin1.com to register for that program. And again, like I said, we are a nonprofit organization, and we really basically, your support helps keep us growing and helps us to share the mission of oneness throughout the world. So any donations, large or small, is greatly appreciated. So we thank you so much for your support. So thank you again, Neil, for being. Here, this slide just shows you our and I don't like our hierarchy because we don't have a hierarchy. But Steve Farrell, Dee, Nanette, Garth, Christine, and myself, we are all the ones that help bring this program together. And of course, our co-host, Anna Marie Peters.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Neil. It was simply fantastic. The time was way too short. I knew this before, and we're going to do this again. That's a promise.
Yes. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed speaking to you, and thank you to all the viewers' questions, and I hope to see some of you in the future. So thank you very much.
We wish you all of the best. We wish you all of the best with this beautiful work, Neil. Thank you.
Thank
you, everyone.
Thank you all. You've been great. This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Garth, Caroline, Christine, everyone in the background.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.